Peace, y'all. It's your man, SoulMan IT. Welcome and welcome back to the channel. Today is episode 3, titled A.S.N.F, A Son Never Forgets. This is airing on Father's Day as well as al-Adha. I can't think of a time in which both of these days were on the same day. So happy Father's Day to the fathers out there, to the stepfathers, to the uncles, the older brothers, and the men who just fill the role of father when it's needed and when they have to. Otherwise, who's going to be the guide? Especially during times of ignorance, or jahiliyyah, as we'll say in Islam. This is also Eid al-Adha, which is the second Eid for us as Muslims. And this is when, during the last month of the Muslim calendar, Dhul Hijj, and this is when the Muslims make the pilgrimage to Mecca. Yesterday was the day of Arafah, in which we fast. So my voice is a little hoarse because I was fasting all day yesterday, while trying to record this episode, and any and everything was against me in doing this episode. So I say this now, forgive me if the phone goes off. I got it on silent, but still, nonetheless, if the doorbell rings, if my hamsters decide to be hamsters, right? Forgive me for the audio issues. And then I'm hoping that my audio doesn't crap out like it did yesterday, when I did get the best take of the recording for yesterday. So, with that being said, why is today important? Well, we are in a time of uncertainty, which is one of the things I want to talk about today. I got 5 points here. Guidance, a father's sacrifice, A.S.N.F, a son never forgets, manufactured uncertainty, and a black father in tech and media. All those things are important. And then again, like I said, today is Eid al-Adha, the Feast of Sacrifice, commemorating two of our great prophets, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace be upon him. This was believed to be the day that he gave his last sermon during the last year of his life. A lot of important things were said. My father tended to come from the Sahih al-Bukhari narration of that day, as well as the Maliki Madhab traditions and school of thought. As far as it relates to Prophet Abraham, who's believed to be the father of the 3 religions, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, and peace be upon Prophet Ibrahim, he was asked to sacrifice his son, Ishmael, and he kept having a dream, and he even came to his son and said, "Son, I keep having this dream of I have to sacrifice you." And the devotion of his son saying, "Father, if that's what it was, that's what it is, then that's what it is. Let it be so." And it's oftentimes referred to that Ishmael being a very strong, obedient son to his father. Because how many of y'all would be that devoted if your mom, your pops came to you and was like, "Look, I've been having a dream." Hopefully they're not, because ain't none of us prophets. But the point being with this story here was showing you the strength of a son, and then as it relates to the father, Abraham, him going to the mountaintop and getting ready to do the slaughter as much as it pains him, and Allah sending down Angel Jibril to say, "Stop, you've shown your devotion, here's a ram to slaughter instead," right? And so this is a tradition we do every year, in which we slaughter a cattle, so this way we can feed not only our community but also feed those who don't have food and who also lack community as well, and try to bring them into the fold of the righteous and what we do that is right. It's one of the things my father had said before he had passed on when I did an interview with him. You can check out some of that interview on the album that I made called Ramadan in Babylon, which features him on the front cover in the mosque that we had helped establish in Binghamton over on Conklin Avenue, when it was just my pops, Brother Alam, may they both rest in peace, Rahimullah, and myself, we would be the first three that would show up, no matter for what prayer it was. And this was mainly my father and Brother Alam, very devoted brothers to making sure that Jamaat, that mosque, was open for the 5 prayers. And to this day, that mosque still stands. It used to be a church that was going to be demolished, and Brother Alam had purchased that church because there's blessings in keeping a place of worship still a place of worship, and not, I think people were saying there was going to be a strip mall or something like that, and it was just like, yeah, no. Very beautiful building. So shout out to whoever did the architectural work for that as well. For today's episode, it's titled A.S.N.F, A Son Never Forgets. So those 5 points I want to cover, guidance, a father's sacrifice, A.S.N.F, A Son Never Forgets, from the movie Men of Honor, manufactured uncertainty, and then a black father in tech and media, and what that meant to not just me, but to the community back home, my Jamaat back home, right? So let's start out here with guidance and guides, because Lord knows we need guidance. That's one thing that I do miss with my pops. My Baba, he passed back in August 2017, in the summer of 2017. I miss him every day. I think about him every day. We did a lot of things together. Used to bring me to the flea markets, right? And that's where I learned how to sell. It's where I learned how to sell, how I learned how to buy, how I learned how to flip things, learn how to haggle or be haggled. Man, that I suck at haggling in the beginning. He'd have to stand there and just, what was the spiel? Yeah, we got oils and incense, $5 a bottle, 2 for $7. Got your pack of incense, 20 sticks in a pack, $2, 3 for $5, right? And that's where I would learn how to do a deal, and how to deal with the people and deal with them proper, and make sure that they left and walked away with a good deal. And we went to 2 flea markets. We went to Jamay's out in Conklin, and then we was one of the only few black vendors when we was out there, and it was there that I learned how to stand firm amongst non-black folk and non-Muslim folk. And when you black and Muslim in upstate New York, oh buddy, ain't that fun. And so we learned these different things without having to, well, for the most part, without having to compromise our identity. And there were times where you had to compromise your identity to make ends meet. And my father was a good guide in that, and he gave good guidance. And there's at least he had a saying. He's like, your dad, in your mind as a child, you take him as a supervillain, right? And he prepares you for the rest of the supervillains in the world. Some folks have it harder than others. His dad was he didn't like him. And a lot of my dad's hardness came from making sure that he was not like his dad with me. My grandfather on that side was an abuser, and my pops loved my grandmother, Grandmama Daisy. I never got to meet her. I wish I would have gotten to meet her. She passed when she was in her 30s. And this is during a time in New York City when things were just different. They had to migrate to New York City. That's a story for another time. But they had to migrate to New York City. And, my dad talked about, it reminded me of that scene in Goodfellas when Ray Liotta's character, rest in peace, he's a youngin' and he got these bags of groceries. And my dad used to talk about how, like, when you was running the streets and depending on who you was running with, you was getting paid, and there are times where you have to pay one of your little homies or one of the kids to help you carry them bags home, right? And just, shooting dice with the old timers and sitting in a car on top of an apple crate because you couldn't, and then having to figure out how you're gonna ride the car when you like 10 years old, right? Like I said, a different time, a different New York, and just what you are willing to do for your mom, for your family, right? All of us go through our own period of ignorance, our own jahiliyyah, and that's the importance of a guide. From Prophet Ibrahim, trying to be a guide for his people, for his family. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam being a guide for not just the Arabs of that time, but for everyone, for the world, and coming with a message that's good and sound for the rest of the world. And there's a real big blessing in being a guide and guidance. There's a hardship that come with it as well. It is not an easy task, especially in times like today, and another time of ignorance, when no one really respects the guides, respects the guidance. We say we do, but then as soon as we get it, we're just like kids all over again. It's like when your parents wake you up to get up out of bed to go to school. I don't want you throw the cover back on you, right? That's what it feel like today, at least with people from my generation. I'll be 37, Insha Allah, next month, if I live to see it. And that's what it feel like with dealing with 30-year-olds and older. Some 20-year-olds too. Y'all can throw yourself in this boat. But then I can't even be necessarily that mad at you, because who was guiding you? Chances are, at the very least, it was my generation. And look what we've done with that. When it comes to a father's sacrifice, like what, we're taught on this day to think of what are you sacrificing for the sake of Allah? What are you giving up? There's a brother out here in Pittsburgh, Brother Minikek. Shout out to Brother Minikek, Brother Men, who got, famous teaching, what are you willing to give up in order to go up? If our spirit or our essence, if our dreams are like a weather balloon, and you got the sandbags on the weather balloon, right? What are you willing to give up in order for you to go up? You got to let go of them sandbags in order for your balloon to keep rising. Along with the fire helium apparatus to keep the balloon rising. What are you willing to give up? What are you willing to sacrifice? And I feel like this was a good lesson that my pops would try to give, not just to me, but to others that remember him. Because you have to give things up. You have to sacrifice in order to get what it is you need, right? Like, you want to get to work, you might have to sacrifice your sleep hours. You might have to get up early, in other words. My dad and I, we traveled a lot. We'd be in the car all the time. And that was always the thing of not wanting to be late, to be on time. And so we would get up early. When it came to the flea market, we would prepare 2 or 3 days ahead of time at the very least for, we did the flea markets on Sundays. If it was in Conklin, it was on Saturdays and Sundays. We're talking about him, rolling the incense that Monday up until like Wednesday, Thursday. Him drawing the oil for the bottles, the drums of oils that he would sell, and then packing the car up on Friday night right after Juma. And then we get the ice chest ready in the morning. So all we had really was the ice chest to fill up with ice from the gas station and have our foods and stuff like that. He had his health issues, so from being diabetic, hypertension, 3 types of cancers, hepatitis. in other words, he couldn't take no chance on whatever food was being sold, and he had to take his medication. He was real prompt on that, and prompt because he ain't want me to lose him too early, whatever that means, if we're all on God's time, right? And that's something he always mentioned, man. Like we don't control time at all. So just be mindful of your time, be mindful of how you spend it. He always say stuff like that. Very wise man, very wise man. He wore a lot of hats, for the man who was always seen with his asoke or his talbush, the African or Eastern kufi, right? Not the skull cap. He ain't wear that one, but he wore other traditional ones that you see. Even some, a lot more so your elders, especially your older black folk here in this country, where still those of like the Moorish community or of the Muslims of America community, they still wear those traditional garbs. If you got some Yoruban influence with you and you're a Muslim and you wear the asoke already. But he wore many hats. And a funny story in saying that, when he had got out of prison, he was in prison for the first 2 years of my life. And when he got out, the only job he could get, and this man, smart, bright as hell, bright as heaven, had a master's degree in math and sciences. And he worked at the Shenango Valley State Park. And the only job he could get was being a janitor there. Being a maintainer, if you will, and working in maintenance. And he did that for a time. And then when they got a new director, I think it was there, I forget what the status of his boss was, the title of his boss. When they got a new director, the director wanted to meet everybody. So he brought my pops in the room one day and he's looking at his file and he's just like, "What you got a broom for, man? You got a degree?" And my dad was just like, "Hey, that's all doohickey gave me. You got something better?" And the director said, "Is like, you want to be one of the Rangers here?" My dad was like, "Do I got to wear that stupid hat?" You thinking of like the Mounties, in Canada? Shout out to the Mounties. He ain't want to have that hat. And if you know your history, it was just like he didn't want that hat. Lucky if you caught my pops in a fedora, anything with a brim like that. The brim hats that we have is like this, the one fold going towards the front. Very military, like for us. But nonetheless, I don't want to get into that. My military family folk gonna chew me up. He had said, "I gotta wear that," and then the director was just like, "No, you ain't gotta wear that, but you gotta wear like the one that got the logo on it." He's like, "All right, I can do that." And so they gave my dad the Ranger job. He was good at it, and because he had that job, we, three of us, my mother, him, and myself, especially after my little sister died, we would go up to Shenango Valley, in the fall time, and we would, get a cabin at a discount, and we would just spend the weekend there. We didn't really have too much vacation time. My mom worked around the clock, and whatever time she could take off, she took off, and my pops was always working. He was pretty much doing his thing, working up until the day he died, August 14th. And there's some good memories. And just to have a man that was willing to wear whatever hat he had to wear. I remember my pops and I historically would get into it. For better and for worse. And I remember there was a time where I said, "Yo, Baba, sometimes, man, I just need you to be just the dad part of Baba. Like, you be, drill sergeant Baba. You be Obi-Wan Kenobi Baba. And he had said, hey man, I got to be whatever you need me to be, whatever you need, and the need that you don't even know. I got to be your grandfather. I got to be your uncle. I got to be your brother. I got to be your friend. I got to be your dad because you ain't got it. Because I didn't have those in the way that he was trying to give. On my mom's side, I did and still do have uncles. Shout out to them. And in the community, I have Muslim brothers. Shout out to the Abdul Rahim family. Shout out to al-Adha, y'all. Y'all know who you are. I ain't trying to give them a list. But, shout out to y'all. But what he was talking about was the actual, family in your family. And, I lost my brother when he was in middle school. I didn't get to meet him. So I was really hard pressed for siblings. Still hard pressed for siblings. But you miss that boat and it just keeps on sailing. So he wore whatever hats he had to wear. And, one of those hats was being the black dad who was into media and tech. He made the radio station, WUCI. Him and Tom Siglin. And then they brought on more folks, the WUCI board. And that's how him and my mom met, right? Her being the secretary and treasurer. If they didn't meet, I wouldn't be here. But he was big on public service, public programming, especially coming from New York City where you had, DJs, radio disc jockeys that were in the community, that were a part of the community, that played playlists and songs that the community liked, that spoke on stories that were happening with the community. Like the last time I ain't seen something like that, especially in media, is P.D. Green. Rest in peace. My dad and I watched a lot of movies. We used to go to the movies. When we watched that movie, Talk to Me, the scene where Reverend Martin Luther King is assassinated, and Don Cheadle and Eliza Chitwell. Hold up, I'm messing up his name. Let me look that up. I always mess up his name, and I'm so sorry, Elijah. I'm so sorry. Because it ain't right. It ain't right. His name ain't even Elijah. I'm so sorry, Chitwell Elijah for. Ejiofor. When we meet, you're going to have to tell me how to say your name proper, because I'm not listening to nobody else. My name is Idasa Usaja Tariq, right? And I go by SoulMan IT because no one would be able to say my name, and still to this day be getting my name messed up. Even when you tell it to them, 5,000 times. Deja. Let me not go there, though. My dad, he'd be like, no, you're going to learn this. You're going to learn my name right now. Right now. Ashimba. Ashimba. Let me settle down. The movie and Talk to Me. I remember when we watched that. There's a scene that we had to pause it for a second because it was real. And you remember what that was like when Martin Luther King had passed. It was assassinated, rather. And cities across America had black folk, black cities had uprose, had risen up, and got mad. And you took out one of our own, and they burned them cities down. And there was a lot of civil strife that had happened, and it brought him back to where we had to pause for a second, right? And some of you know my father was one of the Attica 5 in the Attica riots. So we're talking about black folk of a certain time. When we talk about the civil rights, you're talking about black folk who was about it. My generation and a lot of the folks of this generation, we say we about it, but we not. We nostalgic. We are nostalgic. And when you come from these hard grassroots movements, right? that were beaten down. So a lot of my generation be talking about the elders and the old folk as if they ain't shit. And it's like, you don't even know what they've had to go through. And then in some cases where you do, you could give some compassion. You could give some grace where it's fitting. I'm not saying everybody from that time was deserving of it. We got a lot of, as he would say, a lot of knuckleheads from that time that deserve some knuckles to their head. And they were the ones who would do that. We don't do that stuff anymore. We like to be more gangster than gentlemen. There was a time when gentlemen used to whip that ass of a gangster. We are so far removed from that now. It's pathetic, as you would say. But anyway. My dad he came from a different time. And it feels like those times are upon us again. This new age of ignorance that not just here in the States or here in North America is facing, but the whole world at the same time. And I think of these things. He had talked about a new order forming, and that would be here, after he would pass. And my elders, they talking about it now. And a lot of us ain't listening. Don't really care. Some of us know, and we're just like, oh, here it is. I didn't think I'd be around. And it's upon us now. And we have to band together as a community again. I remember when I first moved back out here in Pittsburgh, 2013, and I was doing activism with One Hood. And one of the things I kept on saying was, we only come together when it's Black Death. When one of our boys, one of our girls is found dead or goes missing and then is found dead, like, that's the only time we come together, is death. We don't be coming together for life. Any time we try to come together for life, there's always some group, there's always somebody who keeps the division and keeps us divided. Well, I don't like that event. I don't like that event over there. I don't like them. I don't like them. And there's no rhyme or reasoning for why you don't like them. When you get down to it, if you ask, because you can have a gripe with someone, you can have a rightful gripe with someone. And there's a lot of us that gatekeep for ill intentions, for bad intentions. Some stuff you gotta keep people away from. That's the whole purpose of a watchtower, right? Or a gatekeeper or a guard at the gate. You can't let everybody just come through all the time, right? Y'all been to the clubs, y'all been to spaces in which you just let everybody in and then just messes up within a certain amount of time. That's because you let everybody in. You ain't got no vetting process, right? And we got to stop keeping division going and learn. If you're going to talk about why we divided, then talk about how we can come together, right? Offer solutions. Ain't nothing wrong with complaining. That's what a protest is. It's an organized complaint. But if you just keep on doing that and complaining and complaining and complaining and never offering a solution, well then yeah, not only does a solution never form, but no one ever wants to listen to the complaint. And they think that the complaint ain't even worth complaining about at some point. Because at what point do you turn your complaint into an explain, and where you explain what's going on and make it plain for everyone to see? And that's a plane that then flew over a lot of people's head, right? We have to do better. My pops was really big on congregation, on the power of the community. It took 5 men in a prison. That's all it was, 5 men coming together. Of Sunni Islam, Moorish Science Temple, Nation of Islam, to come together and disseminate the word, the plan to the rest of the populace. When you're being treated wrong, when you're being beaten down like you ain't a man, but more a dog or an animal. And then you look at that like we beat animals. Why? How do we come stray so far? And we know. It's not like we don't know. We know how we strayed so far. We in a time of manufactured uncertainty. Is how it was put to me. There's a video. I'll link it down below. You can watch. They go somewhere else with it. You should still give it a good look. But the concept, manufactured uncertainty. We live in a time in which, what does it mean to be uncertain? I mean, you don't know. You have no guidance. You're lost. You're wandering and wondering. Wandering the desert, wondering, where do I go? Right? That's uncertainty. But when it's manufactured, you know, my dad put me onto a lot of movies. The Matrix being one of them. Terminator being another. Total Recall, the older one. New one's cool. Shout out to Colin. But those sci-fi movies, Dune, that show you this. There are groups who benefit from you being lost in hopes that you wind up in their doors and have a hand in creating a situation and pathways that get you lost, get you in a maze, so this way you come to the solution and you're so amazed at what you're seeing. That's by design. That's a serious evil plan when you really think about it. Folks creating chaos in hopes that you come to their order of things. You know, as the good book say, our good book, they got a plan, but Allah got a better one. We can scheme all day long as much as we want. But as the hip hoppers will say, your little arms are too short to slap box with God. And yet and still humans are trying. And I've been in a state of solitude, trying to stay away from folks that want to slap box with God. You stand next to that person too long, you're gonna get struck by lightning just the same. I ain't got no intention of being struck by lightning like that. In these times of manufactured uncertainty, as a Tadic, what does that mean? We're a comet, we're the night visitor. Night visitor like the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who will come at night with his light and rap. That's what taraqa, the root word of that, to knock, to rap on the door and give the good word, to give good tidings, to give some light as you come through the night. What else is a night visitor? The stars, the comets. In our belief system, you see a comet, we don't wish on nothing but wishing Allah would help with something. And we call that praying, giving praise, giving supplication, submitting to the will of Allah and submitting to the Lord, the one God, the one true God. But that comet, when you see it going by, we believe that to be an angel chasing a demon, a jinn, out of heaven that's trying to sneak a listen into heaven on what's going on. That's another role of the night visitor. You look at the other awesome, great angel, the angel that passes on the revelation of God, Angel Gabriel. We have a few strong examples of what it is to be the night visitor, the one who comes in the night, in the darkness, with light. And that was my pops. That was my pops. You know, Batman in another sense. You know, and I miss the black Batman. Really miss him. That brings me to having a black father in tech and media, as well as A.S.N.F, A Son Never Forgets. You know, from that movie Men of Honor with Cuba Gooding Jr. and Robert De Niro. Cuba Gooding playing master diver Carl Bashir. True story of Carl Bashir, the first black Navy master diver, and what he had to go through to be that, and his commanding officer, Robert De Niro, what De Niro's character, what he made him go through. So used to call him Cookie. What's that, Cookie? And just putting them through the ringer, something real fierce. And the movie is a movie, but it still capture the essence of what it is that we have to go through. And in the beginning of the movie, you see Carl Bashir, you see his dad, he leaving the plantation. And he grew up on a plantation, similar to our black side of the family. And in this case, the dad made a radio. It's the ingenuity of us as a people. Made his own radio, and he gave it to his son, and he had scratched on it on the side, A.S.N.F, a son never forgets. And he told him, when you get on that bus, get out of here and don't ever come back. Get far away from here. Sacrifice. He ain't want his son getting the same blisters on his hands from working the mule and working the horse for someone else's land and someone else's things. And that you can make a better living for yourself. I'm still trying to make that for myself. Trying to make good with what my parents gave me. What they still give me. Lessons that I can't ever pay them back. I got real good parents, man. And life is one big ass crapshoot, but one crazy set of card hands, that you get and you gotta play. But I got a good hand when it came to them, and Allah is truly merciful and gracious. My dad is what got me into computers. I remember when he came home, it was either IBM or a Commodore. That might be the same thing. I gotta look that up. But this man had a computer that took a B floppy. You ain't never seen a B floppy before. It's a big old floppy disk. Right? And if you ain't, most of y'all probably ain't never seen a regular A floppy disk, 3.5 inch, right? Like, pause. Like, but the B floppy, man. Also pause. Know what I'm saying? Man, he would have smacked me upside the head by now. The B floppy disk, man, that joint, it could only store so much on it. And the one joint that he had was his alphabet program. It was black and green screen. And it would teach you the ABCs. He ain't like it too much because it was monkeys. For obvious reasons. But it was just, I remember we just pressed the button. And it would just light up. It would just light up. And I was so fascinated by it. I was like, wow. Because you see the TV, but you ain't see this TV with a keyboard, right? My mother, him, myself, we all had typewriters, right? So we was always typing the ching, ching. I think it was on this side here. Which way did it go? It was typing this way. So yeah, you had to slide it with your left hand. Then he had the one that could correct itself. Man, the typewriter that could like erase the ink of what it did. Yo, that was so fly. You had to do it quick though before the ink got dry on it. Those good times. Like technology was always in the house. We weren't afraid of technology. And he made sure, especially as a black man, he was the only black dude I knew that had computers, and he got so good at building them because he would Frankenstein them. He used to bring me with him. We'd go up to the Binghamton University campus, and all the rich kids that would just basically get their trust fund money from their parents get a brand new computer when they start. This back when everybody had computer towers, right? And by the end of the semester, I kid you not, they would throw these joints out. So we would pull up in the car and just get monitors and towers, mainly get the towers. And monitors, you can just take, it was VGAs. You just get another monitor or whatever. But the computer, man, that's like throwing the car out on the front lawn with the engine and the muffler and the transmission, like all the working parts inside of it, because you don't want to lug it back home with you. Say less. Say less. And we'd take them Jones, bring it back home. He'd open it up. He'd show me what the motherboard looked like, show me how to get into the BIOS. He said, don't go tinkering too much in that, man, and then we're gonna have to take it back to take it to the computer man. And we eventually went from a computer man, Chinese fellow, shout out to Yenti. That was my introduction into Chinese culture. Used to go into his spot. At first it was a computer spot, and then he turned it into a drink spot, like bubble tea, right? And he would still do some computer work for my dad. He would, and just even from that, like, and then so taking it to him, and then we would take it to the couple that was up the way. There was a man and woman that would just tinker themselves, and they had their own computer store, Black Sheep, and it's how I would meet different people with my pops. Again, that flea market, that caravan trader mentality, and just moving around, and we'd put these things together, the computers together, and we'd sell them at the flea market, like $50, right? Working computer, then with the monitor, sometimes it might be 75, depending on what the specs were inside there. And folks would be able to get a computer. It was new to them. They'd be able to walk home with a computer, and not walk home, that's a lot of walking. They'd be able to go home with a computer, from the flea market, and bring it home and not have to pay money they didn't have just to be online. That's how I didn't know it at that time, but that was his answer and solution to the digital gap, the digital divide. Just closing the gap, closing the divide. So this way, that's some of the Muslim families that was coming over here that was struggling to make a way for themselves. Because the immigration process ain't easy for people, yo. It is not easy for people. And then having to come here, you don't speak English, and then all you got is a bunch of citizens saying, you should come here and learn our language. Like this is easy. It's not. It's not. I challenge you that English, stupid I even gotta say that English, way easier to learn than American English. You know why? Because we just play fast and loose with our words here. Just to say we can because of this thing called freedom of speech. And you get too free with it, and then no one knows what the hell you're talking about, right? And my pops, he was big on that. Say what you mean, and try to get to the root of what you have to say. No, don't leave so much room. We get into a conversation, you say something, you'd be like, what you mean by that? Well, it's just like I said. Sometimes people say this and they mean this. So I'm just trying to make sure before I respond to what it is you're saying, that you actually saying what it is you mean to be saying. Because there are those, especially black folk from that time, that was not allowed to read, and come from that time of not being allowed to read. And you look at history and what that show you, or what happens to that people that wasn't allowed to read. Eventually they rebel and they become literate. They become scholars, right? A different type of determination of self, right? Knowledge is self. Word is bond. Like these different adages wasn't made up just to make people feel good. It was to make your spirit good. your mind good, your heart good. Give you some sense of yourself that was not just removed from you, but taken from you and hidden from you. My dad was a really good guide. The guide that showed you God. It's the best of all guides. The guide that shows you God, the one true God. So you ain't gotta be wondering about nothing. Not that. I look at my peers today, and I do have sympathy there. Where I wish they too would have come up with a parent, a father, that showed them who and what this infinite, invisible God is, but you can see his works. God ain't no man. I don't mean no offense by that to anybody, but yo, God ain't no man. Men make mistakes, God don't. Period. The rightly guided is what my father would talk about, the Khalifas. And we don't have that anymore. The Khalifa, the vicegerm, the governor. That's one of the highest titles you can have on this planet. We don't believe in the sense of having kings. Allah is the king of all kings. So what sense you got trying to put a crown on? And then you got things like nepotism that come with when you a king. Folks being elected just because they in the family. They're not deserving of the status because they can't do the jobs and responsibilities that come with that title and status. I'll close it, because I'll keep on. I'll keep on going, especially when it comes to Pops or my mother, for that matter. And this is her birthday month. It's happy birthday, Ma. Happy Father's Day to Baba. My lady and her youngest. Tomorrow's their birthday. Happy birthday to them. It's from this Baba that I'm trying to learn how to be a Baba to little man. Which is really, you think you're ready. You think you're prepared for it, but you're not. You're definitely not. And what it is to be a father, what it is to sacrifice and to try to be a guide, especially to young men who know all too well about men who don't give a damn about them, who walk in and out of their life as they please, who give up on them because they're not willing to give up what they got to give up their drugs, give up they chasing after women or sex, whatever it may be. They're not willing to give up these worldly things, as my pops would say. My dad gave up any sense of a social life, really, so that way he could give time to me, especially how many times he was in and out of the hospital, and there were times where it was just like, you don't even know if he's gonna come out alive. Again, this man had 3 different types of cancer: hepatitis B, diabetes, congestive heart failure, thyroid issues, other things that had happened in his life. He was a strong man. And I hope to be able to embody even an ounce of that strength, of that fortitude. He was in pain every day. He ain't let you know it. Now, my mother and I take issue with that to a degree, because it's just like, but it's more posthumously we're taking issue with it, because even when he said it then, he was always a hard ass for anybody that knew him. The part of him was being a hard ass because he went through hardships. And when you're in pain, you're not exactly all sunshine and roses, are you? You're in pain. And because we don't feel that pain a lot of the times, like now I'm having my own heart issues. I'm having my own body issues. My mother, she's been going through cancer. She got cancer some months before. She got cancer in 2016, end of 2016, and was going through radiation treatment and chemo that year. The day we put my father to rest, it was the last of her radiation treatments. I remember the Jewish coroner helping me take my Baba out of the house, loading him up in the car, and bringing him to the morgue. And then the next day we washed his body. Brother Abu Tariq and Abdul Hakim, may Allah be pleased with them, under the direction of Imam Anas, who I went to school with. He watched my father coming up. And then he gave the service the next day. And we went up to the graveyard, and we laid my father to rest, the community that he helped establish. And that's the power of a man. You put your mind to it, you can do it. He used to say, if you think it, it can happen. If you think it, it can happen. If you think it, it can happen. Don't let no man come in between you and your Lord. You know, so if you're not going to the mosque because of a dude, forget them. He said it a different way. But don't let that come in between you. So on that note, before I get all emotional and whatnot, reach out to your fathers. They still with you. And if they're deserving of it, some men ain't shit, like my grandfather. But as my dad would say, from my father, through my father, I have come to be. And you're going to be able to turn around and say, that's my Baba. And then he turns around and says, that's my Baba. And that line goes all the way back to whom? Adam. The first man. The first singular, cellular man. We're all but atoms in this infinitely expanding universe. And to not forget that. We all gonna make mistakes. I think he was trying to learn how to forgive his father. I don't know if he ever came to that, but his intention was there. And really trying to understand, how does a man like that get made, that was so abusive, that, you know, bring someone like my father into this world. So yeah, reach out to your dads. Tell them Happy Father's Day. The stepfathers, the uncles, the older brothers, the men that ain't even related to you by blood, that still try to fill that role because that's what we supposed to do. That sacrifice. That remain steadfast, and even when we fall off, we get back up and we get back on. It's not easy, and there's not a lot of people like my father coming behind me, or of my generation for that matter. My generation needs a wake-up call and needs to get their damn act together, myself included. So on that note, y'all, I do wish y'all a good Father's Day. I do hope you enjoyed today's festivities of the Eid. It's your man, SoulMan IT. I'll see y'all next time. Love you, Baba. Love you, Ma. I'm out. Peace. Assalamu alaikum.